Most men don't lose women because they're not attractive enough. They lose them because they never understood what was actually happening beneath the surface. And by the time they realize it, she's already emotionally checked out. There are things women respond to that they will never explain directly, not because they're hiding something, but because much of it operates beneath conscious awareness. It's felt, not spoken. And if you don't understand these psychological patterns, you will keep repeating the same cycle: initial attraction, confusion, mixed signals, and then distance. Here's the uncomfortable truth: what you think matters often doesn't, and what you ignore is exactly what determines whether she feels drawn to you or slowly loses interest. Most men are taught to focus on surface-level behaviors: what to say, how to text, how to impress. But attraction doesn't live on the surface. It lives in the subtle emotional responses triggered by your presence, your consistency, and your ability to understand unspoken dynamics. The first secret most men completely miss is this: women respond more to how you make them feel about themselves than how you present yourself. Let that sink in. You can have confidence, style, even charm, but if your presence doesn't make her feel emotionally understood, safe, and subtly challenged in a positive way, it won't last. Temporary attraction? Maybe. But lasting attention? No. When she's around you, her mind is constantly processing emotional signals. Does she feel seen? Does she feel relaxed? Does she feel intrigued? Or does she feel like she's being evaluated, chased, or pressured? These internal responses determine everything, and most men are completely unaware they're triggering the wrong ones. For example, when a man tries too hard to impress, what he's actually communicating is uncertainty. When he over-explains himself, he signals a need for validation. When he chases attention, he lowers his perceived value without realizing it. And here's the paradox: the more you try to prove your worth, the less she feels it. Because attraction is not built through effort, it's built through emotional impact. The second secret is this: consistency creates attraction, but unpredictability maintains it. Most men lean too far in one direction. They are either overly predictable, always available, always responding immediately, always saying yes, or they become inconsistent in a way that feels unstable. Both kill attraction, just in different ways. Women are naturally drawn to emotional stability, but they also need a sense of curiosity. If she can fully predict you, there's no mental engagement. But if you are chaotic or unreliable, there's no emotional safety. The balance between these two, being grounded yet slightly unpredictable, is what keeps her mind engaged. Older, more experienced men understand this instinctively. They don't force it. They live their lives with purpose, respond with intention, and create space without playing games. That space allows her mind to process you, think about you, and feel drawn toward you. The third secret is something most men completely overlook. Women pay more attention to your behavior during uncertainty than during comfort. Anyone can be confident when things are going well. Anyone can be relaxed when there's no tension. But when there's a delay in communication, a change in plans, or a moment of emotional ambiguity, how you respond reveals everything. Do you panic? Do you chase? Do you overthink? Or do you remain grounded and composed? Those moments define how she sees you, not your best moments, but your uncertain ones. Because uncertainty reveals emotional control, and emotional control is one of the most attractive traits you can have. The fourth secret: attention is not the same as interest. This is where most men get it wrong. She replies, she engages, she laughs, so you assume she's interested. But attention can be casual, it can be situational, it can even be habitual. Real interest shows up in investment. Does she make time? Does she initiate? Does she show consistency? If you confuse attention for interest, you'll overinvest in situations where she's only partially engaged. And the more you invest without reciprocity, the more imbalance you create. That imbalance eventually leads to loss of attraction. And finally, the fifth secret, the one that ties everything together. Women are constantly observing how you value yourself. Not what you say about yourself, but how you behave. Do you tolerate inconsistency? Do you ignore subtle disrespect? Do you overextend your time and energy for someone who hasn't earned it? Every action sends a signal, and that signal shapes how she perceives your value. Self-respect isn't something you declare, it's something you demonstrate. And the early stage of any connection is where that demonstration matters most. Here's the deeper truth most men don't want to hear. Attraction is not built by doing more. It's built by doing the right things and avoiding the wrong ones. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to say the perfect lines. But you do need awareness. Awareness of how your behavior affects her perception. Awareness of how her behavior reveals her level of interest. And awareness of when something is not aligned, even if it feels good in the moment. Because what feels good is not always what is right. And if you don't learn to see that difference early, you'll keep repeating the same patterns. Confusion, frustration, and missed opportunities with women who might have been right for you, or staying too long with ones who never were. So let me ask you something honestly. Have you been focusing on what to say and do, while completely missing what actually matters beneath the surface? Think about your past interactions. Were you creating emotional impact or just trying to maintain attention? What makes this even more difficult to understand is that these psychological patterns don't show up in obvious ways. They show up in small moments. Moments most men completely overlook because they seem insignificant at the time. But these moments are where attraction is either quietly growing or slowly dying. Let's take something simple. How you respond when she pulls back slightly. Maybe she takes longer to reply. Maybe her energy shifts just a little. Most men immediately feel it. There's a subtle tension, a slight discomfort, and instead of observing it, they react to it. They send another message. They try to re-engage harder. They increase effort. But what they don't realize is this. They're responding to uncertainty with neediness. And that changes everything. Because when a woman senses that your emotional state is dependent on her behavior, it flips the dynamic. Instead of seeing you as grounded and self-assured, she begins to see you as reactive. And attraction quietly weakens. Not because you did something wrong, but because your behavior revealed a lack of emotional stability under pressure. This is where most men lose without even knowing they were being evaluated. Another subtle moment is when you're together and there's silence. No distraction, no conversation filling the space, just presence. Many men rush to fill that silence. They talk more, they try to entertain, they feel like they need to keep the energy high. But here's what they miss. Silence is a test of presence. If you can sit in silence comfortably, without pressure, without trying to impress, it communicates something powerful: confidence, calmness, and emotional control. If you can't, it communicates the opposite. And women feel this instantly, even if they can't explain it logically. Now think about how you handle disagreement or tension. Not a big argument, just a moment where you don't fully align. Maybe she challenges your opinion, teases you slightly, or tests your reaction with a subtle comment. Do you become defensive? Do you try to prove your point? Do you backtrack to avoid discomfort? Or do you stay calm, grounded, and firm in your perspective without turning it into conflict? This is one of the biggest hidden signals of attraction. Women are not just listening to what you say, they're observing how you handle emotional pressure. And most men fail here because they are more focused on being liked than being respected. And here's the truth. Respect always comes before lasting attraction. Without respect, attraction fades. Another mistake most men make is over-investing too early. You meet someone, there's a connection, and suddenly you start prioritizing her in your schedule. You respond instantly. You make yourself fully available. It feels right in the moment. It feels like you're showing interest. But what you're actually doing is removing any sense of challenge or curiosity. You're making the outcome too certain, too easy. And while that might seem positive, it quietly reduces her emotional engagement. Because attraction grows in space. It grows when there's room to think, to wonder, to anticipate. When everything is immediately available, there's nothing left to process. No emotional build, no curiosity. This doesn't mean playing games. It means having a life that doesn't revolve around her. It means responding with intention, not impulse. It means valuing your time the same way you expect her to value it. Another hidden dynamic is how you handle her emotions. If she's in a bad mood, stressed, or slightly distant, many men immediately try to fix it. They offer solutions, reassurance, or extra attention. They think they're helping. But what they don't realize is this: not every emotion needs to be fixed. Some just need to be observed and respected. When you try to solve her emotional state, it can come across as pressure, like you're uncomfortable with her feelings, like you need her to be in a certain state for you to feel secure. But when you remain calm, present, and unaffected, it communicates strength. It shows that you're emotionally stable enough to handle fluctuation without losing yourself. That stability is deeply attractive. Now let's talk about something even more subtle: how you respond to her attention versus her absence. When she gives you attention, texts, compliments, interest, it's easy to respond positively. Anyone can do that. But when she becomes slightly distant, less responsive, or shifts her energy, that's where your behavior matters most. Do you stay consistent? Do you maintain your energy and focus? Or do you chase, overthink, and adjust yourself to regain her attention? This is where the dynamic is decided, because when you chase attention, you lower your perceived value. But when you remain grounded, you reinforce it. And women notice this, even if they don't consciously analyze it. Here's another layer most men miss: emotional pacing. Attraction is not about intensity, it's about rhythm. If you move too fast emotionally, you create pressure. If you move too slow, you create disinterest. The key is alignment, matching energy without forcing it, letting things develop naturally instead of trying to accelerate connection. Most men rush because they feel something and want to secure it, but attraction doesn't work that way. The moment you try to lock it in, you disrupt the natural flow. And finally, there's self-perception. How you see yourself determines how you behave, and how you behave determines how she perceives you. If you believe you need to prove your worth, you will act in ways that seek validation. If you believe you are enough, you will act in ways that reflect stability and confidence. Women don't respond to what you say about yourself. They respond to what your behavior consistently communicates. So all these small moments, how you handle silence, uncertainty, tension, emotion, attention, they are constantly shaping her perception of you. And the truth is, most men are not losing because they lack something. They're losing because they're unaware of these subtle dynamics that quietly influence attraction. So let me ask you something real. When things start to feel uncertain, do you stay grounded or do you start chasing control? Be honest. Now we go deeper into the part most men never reach, because attraction isn't just about behavior, it's about emotional triggers. And if you don't understand what activates those triggers, you can do everything right on the surface and still lose her interest without ever knowing why. There are certain emotional states that make a woman lean in mentally and emotionally, not because she's trying to, but because her mind and body respond automatically. These states are subtle, powerful, and often invisible to the untrained eye. The first one is emotional safety without predictability. This is where most men get confused. They think being safe means being overly nice, always agreeable, always available. But that's not emotional safety. That's predictability without depth. And predictability alone doesn't create attraction. True emotional safety means she feels she can be herself around you without pressure, without judgment, without needing to perform. But at the same time, there's something about you she hasn't fully figured out yet. Something that keeps her curious. That balance, comfort mixed with curiosity, is rare. And when it's present, it creates a powerful emotional pull. Most men fail here because they lean too far in one direction. Either they become too predictable, losing intrigue, or too unpredictable, losing trust. The second trigger is feeling understood without needing to explain everything. This is deeper than listening. This is about perception. When you notice small details about her behavior, her tone, her energy, and you respond in a way that shows awareness without making it a big deal, it creates a sense of connection that's hard to describe. She starts to feel like you get it, and that feeling is rare. Because most people listen to respond, not to understand. Most interactions are surface level, but when someone feels understood on a deeper level, they naturally become more open, more engaged, more invested. But here's where men go wrong. They overdo it. They try to analyze everything, comment on everything, prove they understand. And in doing so, they remove the natural flow. Understanding is powerful when it's subtle, not forced, not performed, just present. The third trigger is emotional stability under pressure. We touched on this earlier, but this goes deeper. Life is unpredictable. Emotions shift, situations change, and in those moments, people reveal who they really are. When you remain calm during uncertainty, when you don't react impulsively, when you don't let small disruptions throw off your energy, you create a sense of stability that is deeply attractive because it's rare. Most people react. They mirror emotions. They get pulled into chaos. But when you stay grounded, you become a point of emotional reference. Someone who isn't easily shaken. Someone who doesn't need external validation to maintain internal balance. That kind of presence creates trust without words, and trust is the foundation of lasting attraction. The fourth trigger is feeling chosen, not chased. This is one of the most misunderstood dynamics. Chasing creates pressure. It signals that you're trying to gain something, that your attention is dependent on her response. But choosing is different. Choosing is calm, it's intentional, it's grounded in self-respect. When you choose someone, your behavior reflects clarity, not need. You show interest without overextending. You invest without losing yourself. You engage without seeking validation. And that difference is felt immediately. Because when a woman feels like she's being chased, she instinctively pulls back to regain balance. But when she feels chosen, without pressure, she leans in. The fifth trigger is emotional space. This is where most men completely sabotage attraction. They think more communication equals more connection. More attention equals more interest. More presence equals more attachment. But emotional space is what allows feelings to grow. It's the gap between interactions where her mind starts to replay moments, where curiosity builds, where anticipation forms. Without space, there's no processing. Without processing, there's no emotional depth. And this doesn't mean disappearing or playing games. It means not overfilling every moment. Letting things breathe. Letting connection develop naturally instead of forcing it. Now here's the deeper layer that ties all of this together. Women are not just responding to what you do, they're responding to how your presence makes them feel about themselves and the interaction as a whole. Do they feel calm, curious, and understood? Or do they feel pressured, uncertain, and slightly drained? That emotional takeaway determines whether they think about you later or forget you entirely. And most men never realize this because they're focused on immediate feedback, texts, responses, reactions. But attraction often builds after the interaction, not during it, in the quiet moments, in reflection, in emotional recall. That's where these triggers do their work. If you've created the right emotional experience, she will think about you without effort, not because you forced it, but because something about the interaction felt different. And if you haven't, no amount of texting, attention, or effort will fix it. So the question becomes, are you creating emotional experiences that linger or interactions that fade? Because that difference is everything. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware. Aware of how you show up. Aware of how you respond. Aware of the subtle signals you're sending through your behavior. Because once you understand these triggers, you stop guessing. You stop chasing. You stop overthinking every move. You become intentional, grounded, present, and that's where attraction begins to work in your favor instead of against you. So let me ask you something honestly. When someone walks away from an interaction with you, do they feel something deeper or just remember the conversation? Now, everything comes down to one thing: application. Because understanding psychology means nothing if your behavior doesn't reflect it. And this is where most men fall apart. They learn concepts, they recognize patterns, but in real moments, when emotions are involved, they go back to instinct. And instinct without awareness repeats the same mistakes. So let's make this simple, real, and usable. When you meet a woman, your first job is not to impress her. It's to observe without rushing to invest. That means you're not trying to win her over in the first interaction. You're not trying to prove your value. You're watching how she communicates, how she responds, how she carries herself. You're paying attention to energy, not just words. This shift alone changes everything. Because when you stop trying to impress, you stop overextending. And when you stop overextending, you naturally become more grounded, more selective, more aware. Now, when you speak, speak with intention. Not more words, better words. You don't need to fill every silence. You don't need to entertain constantly. You don't need to explain yourself in detail. Say less, but mean it. Pause before you respond. Let moments breathe. Let her feel your presence instead of just hearing your words. This creates a subtle tension that builds curiosity, and curiosity is one of the strongest drivers of attraction. Next, manage your availability, not by playing games, but by having a life that doesn't revolve around her. If you're always instantly available, always responding immediately, always adjusting your schedule, you're sending a message, even if you don't realize it. That message is, my time is open and you are the priority regardless of your investment. But when you value your time, when you respond with intention instead of impulse, when you maintain your routine and priorities, it communicates something different. Self-respect. And self-respect is felt, not announced. Now let's talk about emotional control in real situations. She takes longer to reply. Instead of reacting, you stay steady. You don't double text. You don't overthink. You continue your day. She cancels plans. Instead of immediately rescheduling or showing frustration, you observe. Does she make an effort to reschedule? Does she acknowledge it? Or does she leave it vague? Your response is based on her behavior, not your emotion. That's the difference between reacting and leading your own energy. When she tests you subtly, through teasing, disagreement, or small challenges, you don't become defensive. You don't try to win. You stay calm, maybe even playful, but grounded. This communicates confidence in a way words never can. Now here's something most men never master: ending interactions at the right time. Not dragging conversations, not overstaying, not squeezing every moment for validation. Leaving when the energy is still positive creates something powerful. It leaves space for anticipation. She thinks about the interaction after it ends. She replays moments. She feels the absence of your presence. That's where emotional engagement grows. If you stay too long, talk too much, or overextend, you remove that space. You exhaust the moment instead of extending its impact. Now let's bring it all together. Observe without rushing. Speak with intention. Value your time. Control your reactions. Maintain emotional stability. Create space. This is not a technique, it's a mindset. And when you operate from this mindset, something shifts. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop trying to control how she feels. You focus on how you show up. And ironically, that's when attraction becomes natural. Because women are not drawn to men who try to create attraction. They're drawn to men who embody the traits that trigger it naturally. Confidence without arrogance. Calmness without passivity. Interest without neediness. That balance is rare, and rarity creates value. Now here's the final truth you need to understand. You don't need to be everything for everyone. You just need to be aligned with the right person. And alignment only happens when you stop ignoring what doesn't feel right and start respecting what does. So instead of asking, how do I make her like me? Start asking, is this interaction aligned with who I am and what I value? That question will protect you from chasing the wrong connections and guide you toward the right ones. Because the goal is not attention. The goal is not validation. The goal is mutual respect, emotional alignment, and natural attraction. And once you understand this, you stop playing the game most men are stuck in. You stop overthinking every message, every reaction, every outcome. You become steady, intentional, clear, and that's when everything changes. So here's what I want you to reflect on. In your past interactions, were you trying to create attraction, or were you simply showing up as someone worth being attracted to? Be honest with yourself. Drop your answer in the comments. And if this gave you a new level of clarity, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to hear this. Because most men never learn these psychological truths, and it costs them more than they realize.